This is Hilly Fields. It's a park near where I live in southeast London. It's kind of between Lewisham and Brockley. We walk here every day. We always enter by this entrance because it's the entrance nearest to a house. That's the northeast of the park. And right at the start of the lockdown, we noticed there was a spray paint mark on the floor, which was a line and then 2 meters written on the floor. And at the time, I took a picture of it, thinking it was really interesting that these marks had been made to try and delineate the space we were meant to maintain between us. Of course, now we're so used to these signs everywhere we go, whether they're kind of ad hoc like the spray paint or more official like signs in shops asking us to keep our distance or follow the markings on the floor. And actually, this has happened in a kind of literal way to this paint on the floor because over the weeks and now months it's been rubbed away, I guess, by people walking on it or by rain and just the elements. And it isn't there anymore, but we're all aware of the rules and how we're meant to follow them. My girlfriend, on one of her runs, she came back and she told me that this was a Monday morning, probably after a sunny weekend. And of course the toilets have been closed. Up at the cafe, you could use the toilet, or used to be able to use the toilet, but now the toilet is closed. And my girlfriend, after coming back from a run on a Monday morning, said that she saw a human shit in the middle of the field. We always start in this corner because that's the corner nearest to our house. And generally our route takes us down past the bowls club. Before lockdown, we'd always look at the bowls club, look at the notice board, look into the green, which is really well maintained. They've got really nice roses around the edge as well that are really well kept. Obviously sometimes there's people playing bowls in there, and it looks like a very kind of sedate, nice way to spend your time. And they were advertising for members. They'll often advertise for members in the kind of months before their, season starts. Maybe it's a season, who knows. And me and my girlfriend would often kind of jokingly say that I should take it up. It's a nice idea. I like the white outfits. So then we tend to walk down this path here, and this runs right past the back of people's gardens. And as you can see, it's kind of heavily shaded by trees. And you can't see here, but between this side of the path and the back of the gardens, there's a strip of kind of scrubby grass. And I guess a lot of dog owners let their dogs do their business there. And again, when at the start of lockdown, we were all spending a lot of time either in the park or, well, mainly in our houses, going out for our walks in the park, we noticed that someone had put up a laminated sign on the tree. And on the laminated sign it said 9 dog turds removed. Further down the path we saw signs for additional turds. So there were sticks with signs that were placed next to dog poos, said turd number 10 and turd number 11. When we came back next week, we saw that they'd added to the sign in permanent marker that they'd removed 2 human turds and that they'd upped the number to 15 dog turds removed. And then eventually on a walk, maybe a week later, round here near the play park, we saw that they'd added another stick to another turd number 16. So this is a nice shady path, and it takes you along the back of people's houses. This is another exit or entrance to the park. I've always really liked collecting wild garlic, and this year we found out about 3-cornered leek, and someone told us it was in the park. So we looked out for it, and we found it. It was all along here, and it's actually grows more abundantly than wild garlic, and actually tastes great. It really does have 3 corners. It's like a kind of long stemmy leaf that if you cut a cross section you'd have a concave triangle shape, if that makes sense. And we collected it, and I made lots of kind of salsa verde style sauces from it. Now, it used to be that if we ever went for a walk in Hilly Fields, we would come past this entrance and we would come up this paved part. But with the 2 meter social distancing advice that people were trying to follow during lockdown, it kind of made sense to walk across the field somehow. And you can see here there's a line across the field. People have been doing this route for years. In fact, I think the local park run comes down here and then across this line. But we started doing that. It made our walks longer as well, so it was kind of an obvious thing. And then we'd found these wild leeks, 3-cornered leeks. So we started following this path, while we were on, the kind of hardcore lockdown, in one of the first weeks we saw two young, a girlfriend and boyfriend, definitely teenagers. They were obviously kind of breaking lockdown so they could see each other and get off with each other near the trees. And we're talking about how exciting it must be to be 16 and to have a girlfriend or boyfriend who lives local enough that you can come and pash down near the trees. So on our walks we cut across here, walk all the way down the path, and then it gets kind of the path heads off down towards the entrance, and we come round here through the trees. We'll cut across the main path and then go to this wooded bit, and again this runs behind people's houses. These gardens are on big hills, so the hills are coming up to meet the park. So you only really see these top sections of the back of their gardens. People often have their sheds there, or they'll have, someone's got a little tree house and a tree there. You can see this decking. And then we walk across here. So instead of going up the path, we walk across through this wooded bit here, and you kind of pop out here. And this is where a little drum circle sometimes meets. My girlfriend calls it the Bongo Club. When I lived in Newcastle, which is where I went to university, there was a bongo club that met in the Ousburn, which is a park kind of near town, in between the city centre and Byker. And you walk across the Byker Bridge above it, and you could hear the bongo club for miles around, and I always had to walk across that bridge or cycle back across it to get home. It always really annoyed me, the sound of a drum circle, the kind of sound of white hippies or well-meaning weed smokers. But now I kind of feel a bit of a soft spot for the bongo club. When I hear them, I just kind of appreciate the fact that they're enjoying themselves in public without shame. Our route kind of takes us down here, but down here you can go down some steps, in this heavily wooded area, just behind these houses here, is where the wild garlic is. And me and my girlfriend got into a big argument. This is actually why we started collecting the 3-cornered leeks, was because my girlfriend didn't like the idea of coming to collect the wild garlic down here, because it was where I think she'd seen people had done some graffiti down here on the backs of fences and stuff. And she said that told you that maybe teenagers had been there and done wheeze on the wild garlic. And admittedly there probably was a bit of dog poo around, and there's plenty of kind of bird poo. But early on in lockdown we had a bit of an argument about the wild garlic, and I went and collected it while my girlfriend kind of stood back, and then she refused to eat the garlic later. But we kind of made up, obviously we made up, it's an insane thing to spell the end of a relationship. We made up and then decided that the 3-cornered leek was better anyway, so it was a good resolution. On our normal route we don't go down into that wooded glade. We kind of cut through. We once saw a couple just about to have sex here, and as we kind of popped our heads through, they kind of rolled off each other. And then we go down a little kind of dirt path that comes out the side. This road goes up and just stops here by the park, and this is a high school that's obviously closed because of the pandemic. Then we normally cut through. You can kind of cut through up a little path here. When lockdown was quite hardcore, you weren't really meant to sit down in the park. I mean, people did, but we felt a bit uneasy about it. And normally, as I'll explain in a minute, this is a big hill that looks out southwest, and we normally sit there, but we found this was slightly quieter and we felt a bit more comfortable about sitting down, or we didn't feel like we were doing anything wrong or too visibly encouraging others to sit down. So we would sit here for a while, maybe halfway through our walk if it was a sunny day, and then we'll cut down here. Very occasionally we'll go through this patch here, which the council leaves to grow wild in the summer, which is really lovely, just comes up as grass and wildflowers. But often we'll just come down, we'll kind of get onto the main path here again. We'll walk up here, up towards the playground. Obviously the playground has been taped off for months, no one's been using it, apart from the occasional teenagers who go and sit there and drink. And for a long time they didn't cut the grass in the playground. I don't know if this was to discourage people from using it, or if they just felt like it was a waste of resources. So I got really, really long grass in here for a long time, but eventually they did cut it. Up here is the ping pong table. In the old days I would come up here and play ping pong with friends. We used to get beaten by a little Syrian kid. We would turn up and he'd be playing with a stick or a water bottle because he didn't have a bat. And then he'd finish his game and we'd play, and then he'd hang around and watch us. And then he would ask us if he could play, and then he'd beat each of us in turn, and then we'd leave, pretending not to be humiliated, basically. Oh, you can just see Jazz May here. So Jazz May's the ice cream van. He's been a constant in Hilly Fields for a long time. He doesn't normally park at that angle, he normally parks sideways, obviously, to get people. Sorry, you could probably hear the council in the background. They're just cutting all the grass behind my house. Buying ice cream probably wasn't really deemed essential for a long time. Whenever it was sunny, we thought, Jazz May would be here. Jazz May's the name of the truck, by the way, it's not a person. It's like what's written on the side of the truck. He makes his money on the sunny days, the sunny weekends, and whenever there was a sunny day or a sunny weekend. So he's not doing any business really. But he's back now. Really nice feature of the park. Last year they put in a water fountain just right next to the entrance to the play park, and obviously they tried to cover this up when lockdown happened. So originally they covered it with bin bags and tape, and I guess that was a temporary measure, but I wonder if they would have left it like that if it had worked, but people just ripped off the bin bags. And eventually they had to, I think they basically got something specially made. It's like a big grey zip-up tarpaulin, specially made for the shape of the fountain, and then it's secured at the bottom with, I think, with cable ties, so that it can't be undone. I mean, you could get at it with a knife, but I think most people would probably stop before they started knifing open a tarpaulin to get to a water fountain. We walk up this path. This is a big hill going down towards the southwest corner of the park. Early on in lockdown, when it was fairly quiet, we would sometimes sit here because two guys, an older guy and a young guy, I think it was his son, would come and they would do downhill skateboarding. So they would wear a helmet and they would wear knee pads and arm pads, and then one of them even had these special gloves with kind of little plastic blocks on, and they would carve down the hill, kind of skidding, popping little wheelies and stuff, and then skid down at the end. The boy seemed to be more interested in speed. He had the gloves on and he would put his head down trying to kind of get as low as possible and get the speed up, and the older man or the dad was more interested in kind of carving and doing these little kind of skids. Around here, especially early on in lockdown, this section here with these trees, we noticed a lot of people filming themselves, I guess for YouTube or for Instagram or something, doing exercise videos. So people with little tripods set up while they did yoga against a tree, or people doing kind of weights and stuff in front of their phones. There was a Black Lives Matter protest. There've been a few actually in Hillyfields, kind of solidarity protests. And after the first one, we saw all the signs laid up against the playground. Just here at this crossroads of these paths, there's a bin, and about halfway through the first, the hardcore lockdown, we saw a bag in the bin that was from Brockley Rock. Brockley's Rock, I think it's called. And Brockley's Rock is over here, and it's a fish and chip shop that's really, really good. Oh yeah, down here. It's really, really good. And we saw someone must have taken it up to the park to eat it. So that was a sign to us that we could get fish and chips. They're obviously open again. So I think the next night we drove down, picked it up, went back and got in a car and drove home and ate it in our garden. And that was very delicious and very exciting to get food from outside our own house. Nowadays, we'll often do our walk and come and sit here on the hill. It's so busy now. It's kind of like being at a very polite festival. But after that, we'll often either go right round here and carve back to northeast entrance, or we will cut across here, go down this hill and then back to the northeast entrance. So if we're doing that route and we come back round here, in the old days there used to be a pole walking club, like you know what I mean, like where they have those poles. It's normally old people and they do like kind of power walking while holding like mountaineering poles. But since the lockdown we haven't seen them once. I guess they're all older people, so even if some of them aren't isolating, then maybe they felt it was irresponsible to organise the meetups. But the basketball courts and the tennis courts are open now, but they were closed for a long time. But people would break into the basketball courts. A long time ago there used to be a little hole in the fence here, but that's been sealed up for ages. And we wondered where they'd been getting in. And one day we kind of went to have a look, so we came around the back and we saw this big hole in the fence. But it must have just coincided with when the local council had sealed it up. So there's this amazing kind of structure with wire fencing sealing it in and then cable ties holding it in place. Just here, I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it. There's some fitness equipment. I don't know what this mark is here. It's amazing, isn't it? Maybe it was an old bandstand or something. But it's on a flat bit just before the hill. And I think that's monkey bars. And then here are 2 pull-up bars, some parallel bars here. I can't quite see. It's hard to see, but they've all been barricaded off since the start. And these days you don't really see people using them actually. But right at the start of lockdown, you'd often see like a young man like who'd kind of broken down the fence so they could do pull-ups. It was like almost more at the start when people were trying to be really strict that you would see people using it, and now people don't seem to care. The other fitness thing you see quite a lot is what my girlfriend calls log ladies, women who found like logs around hilly fields, they'll often, you see there's a tree here that's been felled or fallen over in the wind, and they'll chop off any kind of dangerous looking branches, but they'll kind of leave the wood around, the local council. I don't know why. But yeah, you'll often, on this kind of stretch, you'll see log ladies, and they'll be using logs that they found as kind of resistance training, you know, as weights. They're lifting up and down. The other thing that you see quite a lot, actually, I mean, I saw signs about it before I saw it actually happen. On some of the trees, we were seeing signs that were saying, please do not use this tree for exercise. The branches might not be strong enough to hold your exercise equipment. I didn't really understand what they were saying. And then later we saw people either putting resistance bands around trees and using them to do resistance training, like leaning back off the tree and stuff. And my girlfriend saw a woman holding 2 branches of a tree and just jumping up and down really hard. She showed me the video when she got back. I think she'd been for a run. And we were quite confused as to what the nature of the exercise was. On our walk, when we come round here, we come down this path and then we circle back along the tree line. The road's here, but you can also just walk on the grass in between this kind of avenue of trees. And around here is almost always where we see a middle-aged man in a high-vis running vest who my girlfriend claims she sees every single time she goes to the park. I'm not sure if this is true, but we have started calling him your mate. So if I see him first, I say, there's your mate. And then if my girlfriend sees him first, she said, look, there's my mate. That's Hilly Fields.